Greetings, this is Screwfubi, the Nostalgia Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story review. Now, this story has appeared only in two places, as far as I know. One being the original magazine, which I have not been able to find. I can't even find a photograph of it. All I know is IBM's corporate magazine, and that I have never seen, I have no access to. It was called Think. But at any rate, we could read a little bit of the story about how this came to be and how it came to be in that particular location. That is, of course, accompanies the story in the one place that is gathered, namely into By Jupiter and Other Stories. And I start on here. It says, okay, in early 1970, IBM Magazine came to me with a quote from J.B. Priestley, and I'm going to read the quote in full when I get to that, which went as follows. I'll just read the whole thing. Between midnight and dawn, when sleep will not come and all the old wounds begin to ache, I often have a nightmare vision of a future world in which there are billions of people, all numbered and registered, with not a gleam of genius anywhere, not an original mind, a rich personality on the whole packed globe. Okay. The editor of the magazine asked me to write a story based on the quote, and I did the job in late April and mailed it in. The story was 2430 AD, and in it I took Priestley's quotation seriously and tried to describe the world of his nightmares. And IBM Magazine sent it back. They said they didn't want a story that backed the quotation, they wanted one that refuted the quotation. Well, they never said so. Under ordinary circumstances, I might have been very indignant and might have written a rather scathing letter. However, these were hard times for me, and there was another turning point and a very sad one coming up in my life. My marriage had been, and this is kind of sad about Asimov's personal life, my marriage had been limping for some years, and it finally broke down on July 3, 1970, with our 28th anniversary nearly upon us. I moved out and went to New York. I took a 2-room hotel suite, which I was to use as an office for nearly 5 years. You can't make a change like that without all kinds of worries, miseries, and guilt, and among them all, I being what I am, one of my worries as I sat in the 2 rooms in a strange environment with my reference library still undelivered, was whether I would still be able to write. I remembered my story 2430 AD, which ordinarily I might have abandoned in indignation. But now, just to see if I could do it, I began another story on July 8, 1970, 5 days after my move, one which would refute Priestley quotation. I called it The Greatest Asset. A couple stories from now we'll be getting to that. But first of all, I sent that into IBM Magazine. You'll never believe me, but after reading my second story, they decided to take my first one after all. It was utterly confusing. Was my second story so bad that it made the first one look good? Or had they changed their mind before I had written the second story and they hadn't gotten around to telling me? I suspect the latter. Anyway, 2430 was published in the October 1970 issue of IBM Magazine, sometimes called Think with an exclamation point on the end. I add detailed IBM Magazine. I think I have actually seen some, but they're the company magazine, or they were for some number of years. I don't know if it still exists or not. And you know how hard it is to find company magazines years and years and years later. Okay, well, so the story is you've got the planet Earth is now occupied by just shy of 15 trillion human beings, and nothing else in the way of any animal life, certainly not any land-based animal life. Everything else is gone. You want to learn about other creatures, we still have information on microfilm if you want to look at it, but you know, the live creatures, with one small exception. We've got these 2 guys, Alvarez and Bunting. We're going to visit a fellow by the name of Cranwitz. A fellow by the name of Cranwitz, who alone, uniquely, of everybody on the Earth, still keeps a few live animal pets. A few gerbils, hamsters, mice, lizards, maybe a couple birds. I don't know, just some small pets. And those few pets are now the only animal life remaining on the entire planet that is not human. A lot living animal life. Again, these seem to be land animals. It's not clear about sea animals, but okay, I guess I just have to disregard that. And these two guys have the job of convincing convincing Cranwitz to kill off his pets and make the world complete and perfect and nothing but humans. That's where evolution was headed. That's where it is. And so, few mice and other creatures, rabbits. Okay. At any rate, so they persuade him of that. He says, "Well, give me one more day with my creatures." They says, "Well, okay, you can have one more day." And then he says goodbye to his creatures. He kills them off, and he kills himself. And so now I guess Bunting and Alvarez can be totally happy and honored for having finally made the whole world perfect. And well, that's kind of how it is. Well, Cranwitz is going to have one more day with my animals, and then I won't stand between mankind and perfection. And Alvarez says, "I'll let the world know you'll be honored." They left, and then here's this description of this world. There's a vast continental building. Some 5 trillion human beings placidly slept. 2 trillion human beings placidly ate. 500 billion carefully made love. Other trillions talked without heat, or tended their computers quietly, or ran the vehicles, or studied the machinery, or organized the microfilm libraries, or amused their fellows. Trillions went to sleep, trillions woke up, and the routine never varied. The machine worked, tested itself, prepared itself. The plankton soup of the planetary ocean basked under the sun, and the cells divided and divided and divided, while dredges endlessly scooped them up and dried them, and by the millions of tons transferred them to conveyors and conduits that brought them to every corner of the endless buildings. And in every corner of the buildings human wastes were gathered, irradiated and dried, and human corpses were ground and treated and dried, and endlessly the residue was brought back to the ocean. And for hours, while all this was going on, as it had gone for decades and might be doomed to go on for millennia, Cranwitz fed his little creatures the last time, stroked his guinea pig, lifted a tortoise, he had a tortoise, to gaze into its uncomprehending eye, felt a blade of living grass between his fingers. He counted them over, all of them, the last living things on earth. So, they're all gone. And everything, ends with a placidity that the universe. No more one unsettling salt, not one unusual idea to disturb the universal placidity that meant the exquisite nothingness of uniformity had at last been achieved. Wow, what a lot to look forward to, right? 15 trillion human beings. You can bring it all the way up to a full round even 15 trillion now that Cranwitz and his creatures and living things are now eradicated. Well, that's kind of depressing. So we'll be having another story called The Greatest Asset. In between those two, however, we have another. I don't know, it is kind of a depressing, it's a downer of a story, and I think it's meant to be a downer. I mean, he's not defending the quote, he's just saying, it's kind of like, what if this is how it is, and it ends like that? That's it? Humanity's story has basically ended. Oh yeah, 15 trillion human beings, not a one of them means anything or can do anything or is even worth remembering. They die, you just grind them up and send the resulting, irradiated dead biomass back out into the sea to feed all the plankton and whatever there is out there. Ugh, I don't want to even deal with that. That is depressing. Well, anyway. It's a warning tale. I guess it has that value. Thanks for listening.